A Huntsville soldier with a clean record found himself in handcuffs nearly 7 months ago, facing 2 felony burglary charges.
But this man has maintained his innocence, saying it was someone else who did the crime. And that's where our Taking Action investigation started and what led us down a path to innocence proven.
WHNT News 19's Courtney Crown started taking action and working on this case more than 3 months ago. And Courtney, what did you find?
Well, Clarissa and Greg, Army reservist Stephen McDowell was arrested because police think he looks like the man in a burglary surveillance video. But Stephen always said, "It's not me." This case continued to unfold until this afternoon. And a credible source gives a case-breaking tip, new warrants are issued, and an innocent man walks free. Now, before we get into those details, we want to show you the story just as we intended to air it, so you can get a sense of the stakes involved.
This man burglarized both Huntsville Utilities and a pawn shop on Blue Spring Road on May 1st, 2016. This is a picture of the man Huntsville police arrested, Stephen McDowell, and this is the perpetrator. The district attorney's office says both pictures show McDowell, but Stephen and his family point out the differences they think are obvious.
I looked at the picture, I handed it right back to him because it's like, how do you not know your own kid? Like, why do you need to study a photograph to see, is this really my kid, you know? No, it's not him.
For example, they say Stephen's skin is lighter, his eyes closer together, his lips lighter colored and different sizes. They also point out this chickenpox scar on the left side of his face and his nose. Stephen's mother, Tam Jackson, says the noses aren't the same sizes nor structure.
I just want people to see that this isn't my baby.
Stephen's former landlord, with whom he has a rough relationship, pointed him out after the surveillance picture aired on the news. The police reports show there were fingerprints found, but analysis of them was not concluded in the evidence against Stephen. The video shows the subject, but they never checked his height. Investigators went to Stephen's mother, who said it wasn't her son. Then the police caught up with Stephen outside of Huntsville Hospital. His 2-year-old nephew was inside, on life support, dying. Police told him to show up for questioning. A lawyer told him not to. Officers issued a warrant for his arrest. Now, his mother is talking to WHNT News 19 to get her son's story out and argue his innocence.
There is really no evidence linking Stephen to anything. There's no evidence, like there's no fingerprints, there's no motive.
The surveillance video is the only significant piece of evidence the prosecutor's office turned over to the defense in discovery. Jackson says the crime doesn't match his character.
I couldn't put the two together, like my son doing a burglary. I couldn't, because that's not in his nature. He's not like that.
McDowell says he has no criminal history. A check of Alabama court records shows that as well. He serves in the U.S. Army Reserves, did a tour in Afghanistan, has a wife and a job. McDowell and his family haven't pinpointed where Stephen was during the time of the crimes, but they argue innocent people don't track their every move.
We're not criminals. We don't live our lives trying to figure out, hey, can you make sure you tell so-and-so I was over here at so-and-so a time? We don't. We just live.
When word of our story started getting around, things started changing for McDowell. 2 days ago, the district attorney's office decided not to prosecute, but Stephen would still have to wait 5 years for the charges on his record to go away. Less than 12 hours ago, the state signed off on a court order to dismiss the case with prejudice, meaning McDowell will never face charges for these crimes again. For him and his family, today is the day they've dreamed of for months.
I personally want to thank Courtney Crown and the WHNT investigative news crew. They did exactly what their title encloses, and they investigated and they did it thorough and they did it fair and honest. The more and more the story went on, the more and more we felt comfortable with you guys. And I won't ever watch another news channel other than WHNT.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
And we aren't finished taking action yet. We're going to follow this case until McDowell's charges are wiped from his record.
All right, Courtney, now the dismissal of this case isn't the only big news we want to share tonight.
No, a man charged with 2 counts of burglary in connection to crimes committed on May 1st, 2016 is sitting in the Madison County Jail tonight. Huntsville police arrested Derek Hines last night. They now believe he is the person responsible.
So, Courtney, can we see a side-by-side look at McDowell, Hines, and the surveillance surveillance photo?
Absolutely. Take a look. Here's Private First Class Stephen McDowell and the surveillance video that they used to accuse him. And here is the man Huntsville police have now arrested, Derek Hines. You can see him compared to a few of the shots from that surveillance video. Court filings now say he's been linked to the crime by a credible witness. And here at the end, we'll take a look at all three of them together. Stephen on the left, the burglar in the middle, and Derek Hines on your right.
Okay, so what's next now that this mess seems to have been untangled?
Well, the court's decisions also means Stephen can apply for expungement 90 days from today. However, I spoke with Assistant District Attorney Jeff McCluskey just this afternoon. Now it's up to the defense to file for a court order which would make it possible to wipe Stephen's record clean more quickly if it's granted. And McCluskey says, and I quote, "I will do anything I can to help facilitate the expungement of McDowell's charges."
All right, Courtney, great work. Thank you. This story generated a lot of talk on social media once we posted the photos.
Most people who responded on Facebook did not think it was him. The conversation continues on our Facebook page tonight. Great story. Great work, Courtney.
Our taking action investigation for a U.S. Army reservist resulted in dropped charges, but this innocent man's fight still isn't over.
Huntsville police arrested Private First Class Stephen McDowell because they thought he looked like the burglar in the surveillance image on the right. Now, the case caused us to wonder how an innocent person could come so close to being prosecuted.
WHNT News 19's Courtney Crown is asking the tough questions in our taking action follow-up.
In this case, we got it right.
That's Madison County District Attorney Rob Broussard talking about the case of misidentification against Private First Class Stephen McDowell.
If this thing happened today, the exact same course would be followed. All you can do is just common sense. Is there evidence here that gives you probable cause to believe that guy did it? And if the answer is yes, then we go forward and vet every possibility.
You may remember, McDowell is the man Huntsville police arrested because they say he looks like the man in this burglary surveillance video. Broussard saw the resemblance too.
And in this particular case, the video footage of the perpetrator looked a whole lot like what turned out to be the wrong individual.
Our viewers saw it differently. When we posted video comparing the images, comment after comment pointed out what many say are obvious differences between the two. McDowell worries that without speaking up, he might have been a victim of stereotypes.
If you just allow it to happen to you and you don't speak up afterwards or you don't do anything about it afterwards, then at that point, then you weren't even misidentified. To you, you felt as if that was supposed to happen because of that common stereotype.
Those common stereotypes trouble Stephen.
It's not so much a topic that people talk about, but it's a very open and visual topic. People can see it happen.
However, District Attorney Rob Broussard vehemently denies racial prejudice in the system.
They call it mass incarceration. And by that, they imply that it's some racist system that is targeting a certain group of people, which is the most ludicrous concept ever.
Instead, he believes,
why don't you call it what it is, which is mass criminality? Why don't you call it that? Because law enforcement on the street has better things to do than to target a group of people. Instead, they respond to criminal activity.
Broussard says the problem doesn't lie with prosecutors nor police, but with parents.
You can't look and say there's overrepresentation of this demographic, therefore there must be racism in the system. I think there's a lot of soul searching that needs to be done by across the board, all demographics, as far as how we're raising our kids.
As for the case against McDowell, who ultimately dropped the ball that landed this U.S. Army reservist so close to a prison sentence?
We're not an investigative agency. We are the prosecuting authority. So the initial stages of it, it's whatever investigator with whatever local law enforcement out here, that's their job to put it together and see if you can prove a case on somebody. We're lucky to have real good local law enforcement here.
Broussard says misidentification cases do happen, but there's normally more to them.
Here's the good news that the public should know. Most cases have a lot more evidence in them than this particular case.
Huntsville police say they wouldn't do anything different in this investigation either. In an email to me, a former department spokesperson says, honestly, it doesn't change anything on our end. Then that email goes on to say, really, all the investigator can do is take their investigative finding to a grand jury or DA's office and let them decide whether or not a person gets charged.
And it's an infuriating feeling. It's not fair.
Now, McDowell is waiting on official expungement of his criminal charges. Another man is charged with the crimes investigators blamed on McDowell. Taking action in Madison County, Courtney Crown, WHNT News 19.
And Stephen McDowell did file for expungement. He's waiting right now on some paperwork to be processed.
Now, we know what it looks like from the perspective of the civil servants running the justice system, but that system has wide-ranging impacts on all manner of people, guilty and innocent.
Yeah, this story is on our Facebook page, and we invite you to join the conversation. Share what the system looks like from your perspective.
A U.S. Army reservist owes thousands of dollars for crimes he never committed. Following our Taking Action investigation, prosecutors dropped the burglary case against Private First Class Stephen McDowell in July.
But McDowell didn't know the cost of being innocent, and that total freedom, having his record cleared, comes with a hefty price tag. When this WHNT News 19 Taking Action investigation began months ago, Huntsville police and prosecutors believed that the man shown in this surveillance picture was McDowell.
Prosecutors believed they had the right guy for months, but we continued fighting for answers regarding McDowell's case.
The day our initial investigation was scheduled to air, prosecutors decided to drop the case against McDowell, and another man turned himself in for the charges.
And WHNT News 19's Courtney Crown has followed developments for McDowell's charges for nearly 7 months, and she spoke to McDowell to understand the cost of being innocent.
Private First Class Stephen McDowell's case of misidentification didn't end on July 13th. That's when prosecutors decided to drop the case against him ahead of his August 14th trial date.
It's not a thrilling feeling. It's an infuriating feeling. It's not fair.
A check of Alabama court records still shows 2 felony burglary charges for McDowell. It still hurts his reputation, and now he's broke. He owes roughly $4,000 total to overcome this obstacle.
Things like that is what makes people not trust the system. People like that is what makes people not have compassion for what the system does.
Alabama's only had an expungement law in place since 2014, but that law still has victims. Even innocent people like McDowell still have to pay court costs.
How can you have faith in a system if that system is proving you innocent, but you still have to go through the same means of everyone else?
There is still help for McDowell. Adrian Mueller, president of the Alabama Nonviolent Offenders Organization, is paying to help McDowell undo the damage. $300 for one of the charges, $300 to catch him up on his utilities bill.
That can be a real burden on an individual because they just don't have the resources.
McDowell must also cover the cost of fingerprints, a certified criminal record, not to mention the rest of his bond money. He says he still owes about $3,500 total between his bond and to all of the people who helped bail him out following his arrest.
It's too much money. It's too much money. It's a lot.
Still, Stephen has a job and still serves in the U.S. Army Reserves, yet he is worried about his future if the expungement falls through.
Let's just say I went to an outside city that hadn't heard of this case, and there was 2 felony burglaries. They're going to automatically think, oh, he's going to steal from our company.
After Madison County Assistant District Attorney Jeff McCluskey dropped the case, he promised to help with the expungement process in any way he could. McCluskey didn't want to go on camera, but District Attorney Rob Broussard says that promise is still valid.
We have a say in it, so if our say in it is, yes, Judge, we're with him. Expungement is due to be issued on this case, then that's what we'll do.
Until then, an innocent man will keep saving and working for total freedom. Taking action in Madison County, Courtney Crown, WHNT News 19.
The process cannot begin until McDowell files for expungement. He hasn't done that yet. McDowell has until October 21st to do that, and he says the reason he's waiting is that he can't afford to file yet.
And if you'd like to help McDowell move past this obstacle, we have included donation information on WHNT.com and our news app. All money goes toward helping Stephen pay the fees associated with this case.
Author Tam Jackson writes about the fight of your life in her new book, whether that's a death, a disease, or loving someone through an arrest. She promises the reader,
if you don't know what I mean, then you haven't had that fight yet. Keep living. You will. This book is written to help prepare you. Through this book, they can learn so many lessons of faith that it'll steer them in the right directions. It'll cause them to want to think, what must I do to save my kid?
Tam's a fighter. She was taken away from her mother as a child, suffers through an autoimmune disease, and worked tirelessly to prove her son, Stephen McDowell's innocence in a misidentification case. The latter part led the former writer to pick up her pen again.
And as I was going through this, as we were all going through it, the last thing on my mind was that, writing or publishing or anything. The main thing on my mind was making sure that my kid was okay.
Her book, Mother of the Accused, specifically details the journey of proving Stephen's innocence. It all started with a phone call on her birthday, January 27th, 2017. It was Stephen calling from a Madison County jail cell, booked for crimes he didn't commit. That's when Tam began fulfilling her promise to her sons.
And I told them, if you're guilty, I can't get you out of that. I won't get you out of it. What I'll do is I'll write you, I'll put money on your books, I'll come and visit, But if you're innocent, I will fight for you until I breathe my last breath.
There are 165 pages in this book, pages that are full of lessons from the Bible. One of those lessons comes from the story of David and Goliath. A small man fights a giant in order to save his people. And it turns out not all giants in life are human.
The criminal justice system is one of the biggest giants in the world. No matter how people feel, how inadequate they may feel, or how they may feel that they don't fit in, or nobody's going to hear them or listen to them, for you to come along and turn around not just a situation, one family situation, but a community's situation. The entire community can see that there is hope. And so in the book, I tell everybody, look in your backyard. Where is your Courtney Crown? Are you the Courtney Crown in your community?
We all have a voice, whether it's through a pen, a screen, or even a camera. We just have to use it to protect each other. In Huntsville, Courtney Crown, WHNT News 19.